Good morning. Yes, Karen told you to sit down, but I'm up here to really get your attention and encourage you to find your seat. I'm Tara Barney. I know many of you in the room. I have the rare privilege of heading up the Chamber of Commerce, and it's really an honor to be here today. I have to tell you, this is going to be a historic lunch, at least for our organization. So thank you for being a part of it. I'm calling this our first somewhat live event because we are in this room. We have some colleagues in what I'm calling the VIP room right behind, because we responsibly need to keep the folks in this room down to 250. And then we've got somewhere near a couple hundred folks joining us remotely by live feed. So tip of my hat to all of you that are joining us live. I want to take just a second on a safety message. I know you manufacturers are used to that, but we're going to have a safety message from this stage today as well. You got to your tables safely, and we very much appreciate that. When we're finished here today, we want to make sure we follow the same great discipline and make the same great news story by safely departing. So Alexis is here somewhere, and Alexis Bergen from Old National Events Plaza, who most of you know, will join us and help to make sure we leave in a safe fashion. So we appreciate that, doing that. And while I've got the stage, I will say that Old National Events Plaza has gone out of its way. If there's anything that comes out of this that's historic, I think it's the way they have worked with our staff, with the governor's staff, and with so many of you to make sure this event is set up in a safe and still, I think, effective fashion. So many people are taking selfies or pictures of the table setting because I hope it gets used again and again. But it's great to have their partnership. I also want to mention that at your table, there's a few things for your use. I want to thank Barry and our chamber staff who spent much of yesterday filling bottles of hand sanitizer for you. And so we're happy to have a chance for you to all be very safe and to use the wipes. And one thing I've never seen before, that little plastic bag is for you to put your mask in while you're having lunch, so you can keep your mask safe and sound. And finally, because this is an event that does not encourage handshakes, hugs, fist bumps, we've given you a mask sign, and you may use that at your convenience to take selfies or to otherwise identify how you're using a mask as a safety and courtesy feature as we deal with the complicated world we're living in today. So I think that you'll find those all useful. I do want to note that we're serving lunch right now. Please eat. So don't wait for me. But while we're having lunch served here, there are 70 drivers on the road moving around our region, delivering lunch to the folks that are joining us live. So Jason's Deli has worked with us. It's been a phenomenal experience. And they literally have 70 drivers out, and they're going as far as Jasper. So thank you. So we will be welcoming the governor in just a few minutes, but please enjoy your lunch, and we'll get back with you just very briefly and begin our program for today. Thank you all for being part of today's event.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. It's good to see faces, isn't it? Well, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you all here today, both in person and remotely via the magic of electronics. My name is Christine Keck, and I have the distinct honor of serving as the chairman of the board of directors for the Southwest Indiana Chamber of Commerce. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to be with you today, to see so many faces that we haven't seen in quite a while, and for you all to join us for this really special event that we have today. And it is also an honor to have the 51st governor of the great state of Indiana, Eric Holcomb, joining us today as our esteemed guest. Governor Holcomb is in the house, He's back there somewhere, and he'll be joining us momentarily. On behalf of the entire Chamber Board of Directors, we are thrilled to have you join us today, whether you're here in person or remotely. And speaking of our awesome board, well, those of you who serve on our board of directors, would you please stand and be recognized? This is a phenomenal group of leaders who we serve with on the Chamber Board of Directors, and they have truly demonstrated their leadership over these last few months, and I want to personally say thank you to each of you. I also want to thank our SACEM sponsors, which are Old National Bank and Vectren, a CenterPoint Energy Corporation. Our Crossroads of America sponsors today are Alcoa Warwick Operations, Industrial Contractors Skanska Inc., Old National Events Plaza, thank you to our hosts, St. Vincent Evansville, and our series sponsors are Atlas World Group, Fifth Third Bank, and RB, which was formerly Mead Johnson. And a huge thanks to all our corporate sponsors. We could not do this if it were not for your consistent support. They're all listed in the program. We also appreciate your flexibility as we adjusted to this event to meet the safety requirements during this 4.5 back on track stage. And we do again extend a very special welcome to all those who are joining us via live stream today. Thanks to Wild Horticulture for the table and stage decorations. They always do a beautiful job. And Bravo for our fantastic and always ever more complex AV requirements. And it's just going to keep coming like that, I think. Well, as we gather here today, the changes in our region are abundantly clear. Projects enabled by our Winning Regional Cities proposal are creating the energy and quality of place that are critical to our future growth. We look forward to doing our part to make Indiana's future bright and to show the nation how our state can be a leader in growth and prosperity for its citizens. Of course, this is indeed, as we all recognize, a special challenge now as we complete month 4 of operating our businesses and learning to live in the context of a COVID-19 environment. No one in this room had a roadmap ready to manage through overnight double-digit unemployment, shuttered businesses and schools, and the imperative to slow the spread of this pandemic while our healthcare partners, who have done such a phenomenal job, stood up the systems needed to care for those infected, as well as for the usual healthcare demands of our region. To provide constructive, decisive leadership in this tumultuous period, the Chamber made a very quick pivot, and in partnership with the Economic Development Coalition and others, we developed and implemented a portal to serve our region's businesses and other stakeholders as a component of a broad, informed, and nimble crisis response strategy. Even as we stand here with you today, we continue to be on the front lines of supporting both businesses and our community in navigating forward and helping us collectively as a region to get on the other side of this situation. With the collaboration of the Reopen Task Force, the COVID-19 Crisis Response Fund, our elected leaders, and all those who are providing direct relief to our most impacted citizens, we are facing this, and ultimately, I do believe that we are going to be stronger for this experience. We will be impacted. We will be impacted. I don't want to use the word scarred, but we will be impacted. But ultimately, we are going to be stronger. As I just said, we do all this good work very collaboratively with our business leaders, community stakeholders, and government officials. I want to very sincerely thank the elected officials who are with us today and thank them for their tenacious leadership. I would ask you to please stand to be recognized as I list your name, the great Mayor Lloyd Winnicky. Evansville City Council President Alex Burton. State Senator Vanita Becker, District 50. State Senator Jim Toms, he's participating remotely. Hi, Senator. State Representative Ron Bacon, District 75. State Representative Ryan Hatfield, District 77. And last but not least, State Representative Wendy McNamara's, District 76. Thank you all. People live in places, they move with and between places, within and between places, and they depend on the movement of goods to and from places. Because quality of place is everything in the talent and prosperity competition, we as the Chamber will continue to advocate for opportunities that will extend our region's recent success while we support the reopening and recovery of our region's economy, the reemployment of our unemployed, and the work of reimagining our future. We have much work to do on this front. Smart, business-informed public policy work is the #1 deliverable you ask of your Chamber of Commerce. Hard work, active collaboration, and support from you, our members, make that happen. We are an impactful voice because we speak together. Our #1 champion, the individual who leads our state in good years and in this year, the man who is selling Indiana every single day, is Eric Holcomb. Today, our Southwest Indiana Chamber CEO, Tara Barney, and Governor Holcomb will be discussing the challenges and the priorities our region and our state are addressing literally as we speak. I can't envision a more opportune and relevant moment to convene this conversation with all of you and to hear directly from the man who has absolutely been at the front lines leading our state through this crisis. And may I just add, he has done so tenaciously, he has done so thoughtfully, and he has done so in a data-driven approach. What a distinct honor it is to have him join us today. Ladies and gentlemen, will you welcome me in joining the 51st Governor of the state of Indiana, Eric Holcomb.
Good to see you again.
It's grand to be
All
with
of
you,
you.
sir. Well, how was your morning? I hope it was good.
It's been another busy day. We always said in the Navy, every day's a holiday, every meal's a banquet. I keep in mind that on Netflix, I was told it's a must see. They filmed, or the Stranger Things series is based in Indiana, and it's been Stranger Things every day.
Well, we are very honored to have you with us, sir. This is a historic occasion for us, and we are very proud that you chose to make one of your first road trips out of the center of our state down to be with us. So thank you very much. And I can't say enough about what a year it's been, but I think that we might start our conversation with kind of the obvious. Back on Track has been I think, a well-conceived and thoughtful plan for our state. It's certainly allowed for regional variance, and whether it's needed for another round or not is probably remains to be seen, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on how that seems to have gone and what you think it's likely to be as we move forward.
Well, obviously my crystal ball is as murky as yours, but that was really the need to have a plan that was both digestible and transparent, and could at least articulate and organize our thoughts for Hoosiers, 6.7 million of them, and every business owner out there to be able to have a central place to which they could seek guidance or recommendations, to see what we were thinking, to see all the intel that we were gathering on an hourly basis. Obviously, we wake up with new numbers every day that are shared and consumed and sliced and diced, and try to incorporate that into our next decision. But it was very important. We heard from a lot of folks. There were many folks who called me from around the country. I'm constantly dialed into folks all over the country just to check in and see how things are going in their neck of the woods. And at first, folks were somewhat reluctant or hesitant or questioning why we would put out a document that would take us through July, months out. But it was again data driven. We're not date driven, we're data driven, and that determines what dates and how we dial it up or dial it down. We can't live in denial. We don't have that luxury. We have to rely on the physicians and the scientists to give us their best information. Obviously, your mayor does that every single day, and we stay connected. You're blessed to have one of the best local health departments in the state. We're in constant communication with them as well. So this wasn't some back on track plan conceived in the basement of the State House and then unveiled. It wasn't a surprise to anyone that had been a part of it for days and months on end. But it really is a document and guidance that evolves as does this novel, virus, and it will continue to.
Well, I have to say that we've used it. I keep it on my desk, and so it's in active use. And certainly over these past few weeks, well, I would say since it started, actually, there have been a lot of state regulatory adjustments that have been made to loosen some things up. I'm curious to know about your aha moments in that space, because we all, I think, are in lockstep. I want to make sure we do the very best for both our economy and our citizens.
Yeah, I guess you can take that aha, like aha, a couple different ways. Surprise, surprise, or I wish we would have thought of that a year ago. Both are applicable, I guess. I would say, just like every business here, I suspect you learn a lot when you go through very challenging times and a very disruptive time and very uncertain times. There's a lot of anxiety. Folks are no longer working in their normal environment. They're no longer around that support group or that network on a minute by minute basis. So there's change. You learn from that as a state with 27,000 plus employees that are now working in a different space, on a different schedule, in a different place. We've learned a lot about that. We've learned a lot about what real estate we might need and not need. We're not making decisions in a knee-jerk manner because we understand I just hope, but we plan on not being in this situation forever. So we don't want to make decisions in the short term that would have a equally maybe adverse ripple effect down the road. So it's a real balance, but there are a number of aha moments, some of which we knew that were there. St. Vincent's, Deaconess Health here. Obviously, the hospital network has been a real strength for the state of Indiana, and not just in this quadrant of the state, but all over the state. That network has allowed us to, keep those individual business models, but also complement one another. And when you see numbers in Warwick County that are going up as well, if you look at their ICU bed capacity as it stands right now, it's under 15%, but they're close to Vanderbilt County. So we're neighbors, and in more ways than one. 211 is proving to be dialing 211 for social services. That's proving to be great benefit. It was before, but we're really ramping that up. And during a time like this, it's very advantageous. And there's just a number of smaller specific changes that we've been able to make on the fly that will live longer than the pandemic and the virus is living. So we're evaluating agency by agency in terms of staffing, training, hiring, real estate, and then the services that we direct. You know, we telemedicine, telecommuting, you know, everything's tele now. We have found certain providers that are offering these, you know, doctor, physician, patient appointments. One provider went from a 60% show rate in person to 90% show rate online, Zooming. And so during a time like now, when you are uncomfortable, maybe getting out and about for one reason or another, you feel safer in the comfort and security of your own home. We're looking at these, you know, missed appointments not being missed as much. Having said that, again, we need both. We need in-person doctor-patient appointments. I'm not saying we got to go away from that, but we need both options. And so it's times like this that those things are revealed and you build it on the fly. And now all of a sudden, when you get to the other side of this, you have more options.
I think it does give us a chance to think through which of those are going to become part of our permanent plan. You know, we've been using the word nimble and pivot about every day in every conversation. And one of the things that we've done here in Southwest Indiana that's, I think, worked very well for us and probably will become more of a part of our plan for the region going forward is we've really put up sources of unified information for our business community. But we've also looked at our social service partners to do the same thing in that space. So we're not all trying to be the same thing for everyone. And it's, I think, been very helpful. So your reference to 211 is interesting because I think one of the things that has come out of this is an understanding of how complicated it is for the person who's not necessarily ever interfaced with those services before to suddenly need to use them.
Yeah, you just see the power of networking, and it's been here the whole time. And around the state of, if you're trying to address issues surrounding the folks who are homeless, and all of a sudden the private sector and the public sectors are working together, and there's hotels now partnering for the way that we deliver food to those who are in need, and having multiple organizations all doing incredibly good work, but all of a sudden having to become very efficient and stretch it because we're stretched. It will make, as Christine said, we are in multiple ways stronger now, having gone through this to date, and we'll be stronger, whether it's got to do with stockpiles or readiness or PPE, you know, direct access for businesses.
Well, we're going to do a lot more work in making sure our businesses have access to crisis planning thought processes, for example. But I would take a second on just small business, because one of the things that has come out of our more aligned availability of information for our businesses, and a lot of that has been helping them. Our Small Business Development Center has been quadrupled in the business they've been doing. Helping them get to their financial partners for PPP and those sorts of things has been an important growth experience for all of us. But I would love to hear your thoughts on things that have come out of this process, especially if they're helpful to small businesses, because the state has quite a few programs that are ramping up while other things are contracting.
Yeah, credit where credit's due. I mean, a lot of this originated. We wouldn't be able to do many of the things that we're doing without the federal partnership. We've talked about the local partnership here. But credit where credit's due. Our congressional delegation, Congress in general, the administration jumped on this very quickly. And in terms of, you know, the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, you know, that serviced forgivable loans to over 79,000, about $9.5 billion into the state of Indiana. And so that really did help shore up. There's some, obviously, I'm not trying to gloss over the long-term damage and the catastrophic effects. Some things are being delayed, by the way, defaults, et cetera, that we're not seeing right now, but we will. We know. But having said that, so beyond PPP, that program, the CARES Act has been, again, a nod to our federal partners, instrumental in helping us set up very specific programs that are of direct benefit to our small businesses, to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. And there are different programs in terms of helping pay for small businesses, helping pay leases and helping pay utilities and et cetera, helping pay for training, helping pay for technology upgrades because the way the world's changed, because the way doing business has changed. And all that, the IEDC, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, has really become, on this front, really a concierge in terms of that 44 million that's devoted, or the 30 million specifically, 5 million of which we've set aside for minority-owned small businesses. And so when you think about all the access to that consultation or technology upgrades or maintenance upgrades or for small businesses, our backbone of our economy here in the state of Indiana, that obviously are serving our larger businesses as well. So this is upstream and downstream correlation here. And then when you talk about all the 30,000 plus orders that were completed in terms of PPE, the protective equipment, the personal protective equipment, through the IEDC as well, we created this marketplace. Again, another program where we heard, still do from around the country, where people say, now, how are you pulling this off? How are you really doing this? This is not just rhetoric. It's actually you're responding to the needs of small businesses, helping them really get through some very challenging, unprecedented times. We're now starting to convert that or transition the marketplace into a directory, which is more direct to businesses. So we've got these, we've got Hoosier businesses who have to date, and you're again fortunate from the very outset. We had Mayor Winnicky on one of our press conferences because you all very quickly came together in terms of how are we going to assist our small businesses, whether it be through the United Way or whether it be a sign company that's helping people put signs up all, or Berry Global with face masks or face shields or face masks, or up in Kokomo, ventilators. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And we need access to goggles, and we need access to gowns, and we need access. And so we've got all that in a directory form, and the Hoosier businesses are scrubbed. So now businesses or schools can go direct to make those buys and know that these are already been scrubbed by the state. They're Hoosier, so it's us helping each other, and we're growing those businesses, and now we're starting to send those products all over the, not just country, but the world. So we've transitioned, a lot of companies have throughout the state of Indiana, and again, that's kind of run out of the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, that transition, but our Homeland Security will continue to manage kind of our stockpile. So we're not, to your point about being stronger, having gone through this, our stockpile, state stockpile is already there, but then we've also built up this ecosystem in the state of Indiana that's pulling businesses from, again, around the world to come to Indiana, because they know this is just like our auto sector, or just like our life sciences, or just like our healthcare industry or sector, RVs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is a sector that we're intentionally and deliberately building from the ground up in some cases.
Well, this isn't in my prepared questions, but you opened the door. It does seem like Indiana is in an extraordinarily great situation to build and attract businesses and people over the next few years, assuming the kind of thoughtful, strategic leadership that we've been enjoying these last few years continues. And I do think that we have a very good story to tell as people that are interested in growing both people and businesses for this region. So if you want to say a word about that, even though I didn't suggest it earlier, well, please do.
Well, I mean, I think our Indiana ethos is going to be even a more of an advantage for us a month, a year from now. It's always a competition. The competition never goes away. It just gets fiercer or more or less. And in comparison, Indiana continues to shine, and keeping our wits about us, keeping calm, remaining focused, looking long term. We've done a Fairbanks study, working with the folks at Reagan Street. No other state has yet done anything in comparison, and it helps us look out. It is extremely valuable to us for the numbers that are ticking up here in Vanderburgh County as an example. When you're watching that real time, day in and day out, and then you have a study over here that looks way long term, it helps you plan. And it's not just a benefit today, right now. It's a benefit to people around the world who are looking at the way we conduct our affairs. And they want to be part of a place that offers certainty and the ability to forecast. And so we know through the 2 random samples that have been done already that only about 3, maybe looking up at 4% of Hoosiers have had or have COVID-19. So as, you know, I hate to be the downer here, but we got a long road to hoe and a long road ahead and we have to stay on track for our lives and our livelihoods. And so it's when we're building this ecosystem, it's not just our tax and regulatory environment or our world-class institutions of higher learning or our location. It's all those things, and then you are judged on how you respond to the hand that you're dealt. And I'm telling you, the number of deals that we've done this year is just shy of 140 deals, and we've announced under 30 of them. So billions of dollars worth of CapEx are coming to the state of Indiana this year, because people don't, you know, have the luxury of just shutting down and taking it off when they've built a business, but they got to do it where it can grow. And so a state like Indiana, we continue to kind of separate ourselves into kind of an elite status.
Well, one of my favorite measures is where capital is being invested. So if it's being invested in this state, we're doing things right. And I think one of the things that gets us there is our reputation for great fiscal policy. I just have to say, I've worked in 5 or 6 states in my career. It's you know, it's a privilege to work in a state that has a consistent reserve. And things are tricky right now. So would you like to say a few words about how we plan on our fiscal health continuing into the coming few years?
Well, you're right. Tricky is a polite way of saying it. I told someone I feel like MacGyver every day. I'm just trying to, you know, use duct tape and paper clips and, you know, bridge a lot of gaps.
Great example.
But I mean, you got to do what you got to do. Fortunately, in the state of Indiana, and again, it speaks to what you just said, there's a lot of continuity. And this is part of our culture now. It's an expectation. And Hoosiers know how to deal with reality. And so when we responded in a way as some others haven't, not just in the country, but around the world, but when we responded and immediately said, okay, thankfully our fix the roof while the sun is shining approach and build up a reserve and thinking about a fiscal cycle. This villain is a virus. This is not a bubble. There's no one there's no one in this room or any room in the state of Indiana where you can go, this is why we're in this situation. This is a virus that was put upon us. And fortunately, we were in a situation to where even that we could weather better than many. And that didn't mean that we could just wait it out. We had to make tough cuts too. And so, yes, we had the reserve that we could call on, but we never could have done that. We never could have moved delaying our taxes on April 15th to July 15th had not we had the reserves and the ability to do that. And so drawing on those reserves allowed us to do that. Going to every agency and saying, I know what you thought you had, but now it's minus 15%. Help us out. We're all in this together.
It's or delivery.
Yeah. Or, you know, higher education took a haircut of 103, you know, over $100 million. And now I heard from many of them, and I pick up when I see who's calling, but I'm telling you, the folks said thank you, that it was only that much of a cut. And that allowed us, because they're dialed in and networked all over the country too, and they're seeing what's happening. Again, there's some credit that goes out to our federal partners as well. So we're all getting through this together, but that allowed us to not cut or draw down even planned increases to K through 12, for an example. And now we're in a very important month for multiple reasons. One, we'll close the books, June 30 books, 2020, next Thursday. So the budget director for the Office of Management and Budget and Tara Klutz, the state auditor, will close the books officially. That's where we'll see the extent of what we've drawn down. That's what we'll see shortly thereafter, probably a week thereafter, but we'll see the July 15th tax collections, that revenue that's come in. We'll see how our revenues really did over the last few months. I suspect, I won't preempt because I don't have it, but I suspect, and everything that I'm seeing, we're doing better than we would have maybe guessed 2 months ago. And so it's a highly volatile, the target is constantly moving in terms of revenue and expenses. But having said that, because of the approach that we've taken, we're on pretty firm ground.
Well, certainly we're paying close attention to that because we know that there's a bucket of services we count on the state for. There's a bucket of services we count on our local governments for. And I think we as business and community leaders are aware that we're going to have to be working closely with our elected officials and our government partners for the next few years. But I am especially interested, oh, please.
And July 20th through July 31st, if you're so inclined, you might pick up your phone and call our congressional delegation as well. I'll be in touch with them because this is very important, before the, the break. And they were on the spot. I mean, early on, and now we're all thinking every time, governors get together on the phone, we're talking about what's going to look like in the fall. And knowing that they're going to be there July 20th through the 31st, these 11 days are very important. And so we've been delivering the message that we need more flexibility with the funding that you've already sent. Thank you. We need more flexibility. We need liability for our schools and our businesses to not open or not reopen out of fear. And we need, we're willing to talk about sustainability as well in terms of more funding and what that would go towards, because it's hit every state. But for a state like Indiana, when your traffic and travel goes down, that affects your gas tax revenue, that affects long-term projects, and that, again, that consistency and continuity and predictability and stability, that's where we stand out. So we've been in constant, we're not being a pest, but close to it, constant communication with our federal partners about what that might look like. So tax revenue coming in mid-month, closing out the books, and the work that Congress is doing. These are three really important factors that we're going to learn about within the next, 10 plus days.
Well, Governor, you opened the door to this crowd, so I'd reinforce it. Lots of you have relationships with your congressional partners. Let's use them and put them to good work. And I will say, our congressional delegation has regularly participated. We've been doing a Zoom call with our board members every 2 weeks, or every week, actually, for the most part. And they have been extraordinary about joining us for those calls, not just to listen in, but to engage. And so we've got a more robust relationship with them than we've ever had. So it's a good opportunity to remember to use it.
We're so fortunate with our delegation. They've been accessible, and any question that they've had, to your point, I mean, they're calling us too and saying, what about Homeland Security? What about infrastructure? What about, and I feel blessed.
Well, I will tell you that when you're making those calls, you can mention the importance of us keeping that federal highway program moving, because this whole room pays attention to building our bridge.
We're gonna finish I-69 stem to stern, meaning bridge and section 6. It's not a dream.
Would you go back to the budget adjustments you've made? Because I think the K through 12 decision to hold that at its current funding was a very strategic one. And since that feeds into our higher education and our workforce, it makes a lot of sense. But I'm guessing that was a very tough part of this equation.
Yeah, I mean, it was strategic, and it started out as an area that we just did not want. We didn't want to tinker with that for a number of reasons. One, with so much uncertainty, with learning remotely, with learning virtually because of COVID-19, we wanted to make sure that schools, parents, teachers, faculty, et cetera, all the above had some certainty. We made those investments intentionally when we made those investments for good cause and reason. And so that was going to be one of the last places that we ever looked. So we started over here and worked back, and fortunately never had to get there. But we looked at it strategically as this is what you just said. We, very early on, I said, this is a societal investment from the ground up. It's the foundation, and it's generational. And so if we're going to go there right now, we're going to have to make up for it in a lot of other ways later, probably more expensive. And so let's figure out how tight the belt can get. And fortunately, we were able to avoid that. But you said it, and that is, and part of the message that when I was talking to the president of USI or IU or Purdue or our 30 privates or Ivy Tech, and I want these students K through 12 to get to you if they're passionate about going on to higher education and not just directly into a career or into the military. I want them to end up there, but they got to get there first. And to a person, there was universal understanding. And so I've never been a good bear. I've always been more of a bull, and I'm optimistic that we are, if we can stay on track, which comes back to our behavior, which comes back to listening to our healthcare professionals, the scientists and the physicians, and managing those things and controlling those things, of which we can. That's going to make a lot of difference into everything we do, including our education budget for K through 12.
Well, I know that we always know that we could do a lot more if we had a lot more resources. So we're very respectful of how tough these decisions are. May I just take one more second on what I've seen as an enlightening moment of the last 4 months, and that's some of your other senior leaders in your organization. Dr. Sullivan, Dr. Bach, some of these people that we've all gotten to know. I'm very impressed with their command of this work, but I'm dying to know how you recruit these people. This is a tip for all of us.
Well, I think a lot of you are doing it. You've got a lot of successful businesses in this hall. I don't know if I shared this before, but I mean, I used to always say you have to check 3 boxes to come work for us, and they all start with H, and it has nothing to do with Holcomb, but you have to be honest, you have to be humble, and you have to be hungry. Like, you got to be willing to let your play speak for itself on the court. But we got to be taking this to the next level in everything we do, no matter if it's a good time or a bad time or challenging times. And then I mentioned to Jeff Knight yesterday that it helps if you have a sense of humor. And if I ever lose that, I'm just asking for help to find it again, because in these times you mentioned this about this crew that we have. I mean, you rely on your faith and your family and your friends to help get through these type of times, very early on in the day to very late in the day. And so we set out with that's the start. And then when we were recruiting, we were laying that on top of what time are we living in? What are our objectives? What are our goals? I happen to be passionate about infant mortality, trying to draw that number down. We got a ways to go here in the state. And so I was looking for individuals who shared that passion, found them. They saw my passion and raised it. And so therefore you get, you know, people start to recommend folks like Dr. Sullivan or Dr. Box, Terry Stignan at Department of Child Services, et cetera, et cetera. Or when you're doing economic development and you realize workforce development is economic development, and it's synonymous really in today's world. And so when you go out looking for someone like a Fred Payne who worked at Honda, who's been there, done that, understands it, this is easy for him. It's like second nature.
That was a great hire.
Yeah, great hire. But he works well with Bruno Pickett at the Indiana's Department of Environmental Management, or NDOT, or Jim Schellender at IEDC. These folks complement each other, feed off of that. And so therefore you can respond to the issues of the day because it's in your DNA already. And what we've noticed during this last few months is you hit it, is we've really become kind of a family. It's almost like the Brady Bunch. I mean, it's almost like, you know, in these press conferences, you're seeing different characters. I hear about, I mean, a lot of folks send me messages about each one of them because people have now all of a sudden been to Oz. They've seen behind the curtain. They understand it's not a wizard. It's Fred Payne on the spot. And no, I mean, he's already prepared, or Dr. Box, or so they see the skill and expertise of the team, and it's a real honor. But a lot of work goes into it before they ever get there, because you're looking for those skill sets and character to join that endeavor.
Well, on behalf of everyone in this room, I'll tell you, we are in great shape thanks to the kind of staff you've built, because they've been there when you needed them. May I just shift?
Sometimes they're there when I don't need them. Sometimes it's like at 11:30 and we're having this conversation.
May I just shift to something that I think is very much on our minds as a community, and that is how we make progress in the general space of equity. I mean, we've had some significant opportunities to think more deeply about how we support all Hoosiers and how we are the state that is welcoming in that space and is welcoming of future citizens from all perspectives. But certainly I think that there's been a bright light, and you've made some comments that make me think you've got some good thoughts in that space.
Well, you know, you guys have a head start. This button that I didn't steal from Karen backstage, she gave it to me, but E is for everyone. You had a head start on this. Thought it's right by any measure. I always talk about one Indiana, comma for all. That has to be an inclusive statement. It always has been an inclusive statement. It's yet somehow I've learned it can be taken as an exclusive statement, meaning, yeah, there's one Indiana. It's just not for me. I'm not in that one Indiana you're referring to. And so we have to make some positive progress. We have to first, I think, acknowledge our past shortcomings and progress for that matter. But we have to be transparent about where we are right now. We have to, again, be transparent, turn our cards face up and just share with where we want to go, who we want to be, what are our goals to address that inequity and disparity that you referred to, and identify and then remove those barriers that are preventing the have-nots from having a shot at having the opportunity of becoming a have. And for that reason, I'm optimistic on this front as well. I spent a lot of time from Mr. Floyd's last 8 minutes and 46 seconds of his life to today, learning from a lot of folks. And I've learned a lot along the way. Some things I thought I knew, and some folks who have been silent, who knew a lot but never contributed it for a whole host of reasons. And so this has galvanized, or this has brought a lot of folks well-meaning, well-intentioned folks together. But I think it's the basics of acknowledging, putting forth a to-do list, understanding. I was touched, reassured, and very appreciative that Loretta Rush, the Chief Justice of the state of Indiana, came down to my office one day and said, this is not just on your shoulders. I'm in this too. When you talk about social injustice, the judiciary is included in this conversation. And so it's 3 levels of government. It's 3 branches of government. We all have ownership. And there is a shot clock that's going off right now. And it's ticking down. And so what progress will we make? And again, just like this pandemic that we're going through, again, we're in this together, like it or not. We're so much stronger together, so much. And so if you have a plan and you're able to turn it over, a to-do list of sorts, and then you can say, whether it's local, state, or federal, and you're talking about housing or transportation or healthcare or economic development or workforce development and training as some topics, examples of some topics of where we need to make progress. Then all of a sudden you can go out and you can ask for help if someone can see it and they see you're serious and you're willing to lay it on the line and be public about what you're willing to take on. I think that applies to every level.
I like your shot clock analogy. It's very easy to talk about the journey, but the journey's been going on for a long time. Shot clock
that's what
a great choice.
We had I hate to drone on here or filibuster, but we had a couple groups, this is where it crystallized in my mind. A couple groups marched toward the governor's residence, and they got about 2 blocks away, and one of the organizers, Malik Muhammad, was instrumental in diffusing that situation from spinning out of control. And my wife and I weren't at the house at the time, but my wife said, Malik has been 2 blocks away. Malik needs to come inside. And so a day later, or 2 days later, actually, we extended the invitation the next day. And then a day later, we sat in the governor's residence and had a talk. And I asked him that question and said, I got to know, Malik, before we really get into this, what is your purpose? What motivates you? Why are you here? Who was born and raised in South Chicago. And he said, I don't want my 4-year-old son, Amir, to be in his 30s marching or demonstrating for the same reasons I'm doing it today. And I said, what do you want out of all this? And he said, I want to create personal generational wealth and own property.
Great clarity.
We're getting somewhere now. So let's go to work. And so it's what you just said. It is, how long are we going to have the same conversations that Bobby Kennedy or Dr. King or a long list of people? And we've made a lot of progress. And I can give a lot of examples here in the state of Indiana, around the country, including former president or a former college graduate who pays off the student loans of everyone, or Madam C.J. Walker. The list goes on and on and on. But we have to, as we acknowledge our progress, acknowledge the work yet to be done.
Thank you for speaking out on that. I know that means a lot to this community and to the whole state. And I'll connect the dots on that, because as we think about how we grow our state and how we make our state best able to serve the businesses that this organization in this room reflects, I think these are going to be important priorities. But I'm not going to let us get away without talking a little bit about what's coming in the next session. We talked a little bit about the finances that are available, but this is a community that, in my opinion, as someone that came in when the cake was 90% baked, took the regional city's opportunity and leveraged it to the hilt in not just delivering a great set of projects, but a great set of projects that embedded the business community's resources and private resources in the projects, and that really positioned us to have a different quality of place than we did before. And I think as you think about how regions can succeed, probably the best thing we learned from that is how to act like a region. You know, we really, I think, build a culture of trust that's very important going on. We're very interested in continuing that and looking at ways that state policy can help us in that space. Anything you see in that crystal ball, I mean, we're out there pushing on it. It's not just money, I think, you know, sometimes we
That's
think
right.
it's money.
No, that's right. It takes money, but it takes a lot more than money.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of creativity. It takes no, you're a model, not just around the state of Indiana, not just around the country, but around the world, internationally. The Regional Cities Initiative is recognized as something that not just works, but has flourished. And every time I'm here, it's impossible just not to feel this evil vibe. I mean, it is a good sense of feeling in Evansville, Indiana. And to your point, the region. And so when we're talking with folks, initially, and they're referring to a region of the state of Indiana, they are looking at your schools, and they're looking at cost of living. They're redefining all over the country, the world for that matter, but all over the country, what true quality of life means. And especially the Gen Xers and Gen Zers and millennials, et cetera, the younger generation that are expressing that in moving. And nowhere stands to benefit more than Southwestern Indiana, quite frankly. I'm not pandering. I mean, I could say that about most of Indiana, but there's so much upside still out there. And I truly feel like we are just getting started. You've leveraged the Regional Cities Initiative, financially, the projects, including today. I mean, you've leveraged that exactly how it was intended. And it has fostered networks and collaboration. It has set aside partisanship. It has set aside boundaries, whether in our mind or on a map. And you're right. I mean, or I think you were going there. We have to continue to think that way in our investments. And whether it has to do with, and it's not just funding, but it's how we deploy services, how we build, and having the agreement at the outset makes those decisions a whole lot easier when, the General Assembly all huddles up and we start to prioritize in a year like next year where we're going to have less. And so the pie has gotten smaller. And so where do we get the biggest bang for our buck? And thinking regionally will be a part of that, whether it's got to do with infrastructure or healthcare or, I should have mentioned, it seems like Q1 seems like a long time, years ago. I mean, you're asking about Q1 of next year, which seems like a long way down the road. But we had good things come out of last session too, in my opinion. And I would like to continue to think regionally, not just in terms of economic development. They're interlinked. You've proved this here. But in terms of our health as well, true quality of life and place, but life. And so July 1st, you got to have your eyes, your hands, and your brain on the road. That law goes into effect. That's about safety, vaping and smoking age up to 21. So we've got to start thinking, and this is a business concern too. The cost of healthcare ranks way up there. in terms of your workforce. So there's some other areas that we're going to have to focus on during a tight budget, a really tight budget. But we gotta make sure that we're doing things like you allude to that will help us grow that pie again.
I love your observation because I think it was key. Again, I saw regional cities from a bit of the rearview mirror, but the fact that there was a intentional opportunity for the investment committee to figure out how the scarce public resources could really be leveraged for a good business decision, that's the perfect marriage. And I think that's, that's probably good insight for this coming few years for the state, I would guess.
Well, pulling it off was huge for you all.
Yeah.
I mean, because that allows us to say, here is a successful program and approach. And it's converted some. It's converted some doubting Thomases or some folks who are even against it. It's hard to argue against all the progress and the renaissance and having the leadership on the ground here to be able to do that allows us to then go sell to others.
Well, I have to say, again, I've worked with a few governors. You're a great salesman. And you do have a set of great legislative partners in this room that have understood the value of leverage. So we as a business committee, as a chamber, as a community, couldn't have better partners. And we are so honored and appreciative of not just your insight, but the fact that you'll sit here and kind of help us understand your thought process and how you approach these things, because it's nice to be able to have some personal interaction and insight with you, Governor. We really appreciate your time. And we love having you visit with us today. And I hope you will come back as often as you possibly can.
You got me out of Indianapolis. Thank you. I've been waiting for this day for weeks. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Governor.
Well, thank you all for attending today's event in person and virtually. Well, I didn't have to think I'd say that word so much in my lifetime today. And Governor, thank you so much for making one of your first public appearances down here in Southwest Indiana and for sharing the plan to get back on track. And I can guarantee you this, the people of Southwest Indiana are in it with you, and we're just so grateful for your leadership. So, Governor, thank you very much. One of the bright spots in the past few months has been the generosity of our community, particularly as it relates to contributing to the COVID-19 relief fund. And Governor, in honor of you, our fund is approaching $6 million here locally. And in honor of you, the Chamber is going to make a donation for your visit down here today. So thank you very much for making that. It's fitting that we close today's event, that I have that opportunity to do that. Some of you may have been aware, Tara talked about our local chamber hosted calls with the business community, and my task for those calls was to close the event out. And during those calls, I was always very optimistic. And I remain optimistic today as I stand before you. But the reason why I was so optimistic is I believe deeply in the people of this great state. I see overwhelming evidence that together we are going to be successful. While I'm not a native Hoosier, I have learned during my time here what Hoosier stands for. It stands for common sense, it stands for strength, and it stands for resiliency. And so I'm so grateful for all of you in this room. We have great leaders in this room. I believe in our mayor. Lloyd is technically the mayor of the city of Evansville, and I've told this to him personally, but I believe he's the mayor for our region here. And he represents us so well across the entire state, and he always keeps the region interest in mind. I believe in our hospitals. Our healthcare partners have done a fantastic job not only preparing and taking care of all those that are sick, but they've also done a great job educating their community about how to stay safe and healthy. I believe in our local schools. I believe in our higher educational institutions and our not-for-profit organizations. I believe in their passion for caring for our region, and I believe in their resiliency. I believe in our local businesses who have stepped up not only to protect their employees and their community, but great examples of how they're now making PPE equipment. I genuinely believe in our political leaders. That's not very easy to do outside of Indiana, but I believe in our political leaders. And very importantly, throughout this pandemic, I believed in our governor. Not just that you would collect and use the best possible available data, but you would listen to your fellow Hoosiers about what we needed to do to beat this pandemic together. So it's fitting that I close out today's session with my remarks of the same message on those chamber calls, which is we are all in this together. We have an exceptionally strong state, and we have an exceptionally strong community. Thank you all for attending today. Alexis is going to come up here and dismiss us, so everybody hold tight for a second, and she will dismiss us one by one. Governor, thank you.